Neutron exhibit hangar. So anyway, let's see what this one's all about. Like I said before, I believe this is pretty much Vietnam era aircraft and support equipment, and I'm sure there's every one of these pieces in here tells a story. So that's what's really neat about coming to these museums, is just thinking about the stories that are involved with all of them. So the first thing that greets you when you come in the door is this F-100. And they have a part of a helicopter sitting here, but basically an example of a helicopter cockpit for everybody to take a look at and experience. Now here we have the Cessna 02 Skymaster. This was a forward air control aircraft. They could do light ground attack, but usually the rockets that you see, the rocket pods, in most cases those were smoke rockets, so they could fire smoke and basically call in the bombers or the fighters to come in and help out with the ground troops. Now the interesting thing about the Skymaster is it's a push-pull airplane, meaning that it has the engine in the front, and you can barely see it. That's a better view of it. It's awful dark though, but it has an engine in the back also. So one pushes and one pulls. So this is a twin engine aircraft. A lot more reliable than a single engine aircraft, and it was basically a replacement. This was its predecessor, the Cessna 01E Bird Dog. As you can tell, it looks pretty much like a light civil aircraft, and that's what it's based on. It was built by Cessna, just a military version really. It has some armament to where they could fire rockets, again, generally smoke rockets, but single engine, normally a single pilot. Sometimes there might be an observer, but you can see the radial aerials back there on the tail. So they would do spotting, troop movements, downed aircraft, pilot recoveries, that kind of stuff. So, but like I said, this Bird Dog is the predecessor to the Skymaster over here. And to hear stories, they really love the Skymaster with two engines versus one in this one. So anyway, walking up behind this F-100, and man, this is, I mean, if you know anything about aircraft, if you're into aircraft at all, I mean, this is just absolutely over the top in my book anyway. I'm just completely astounded. Gorgeous work on these airplanes. You actually kind of walk underneath this one as you're going. And again, forgive me, because I don't know all the Air Force aircraft quite like I did the Navy aircraft. But here is the marker for that. So de Havilland U-6A Beaver. I would imagine a U designates utility, so they would use this to move people around. So this was basically used to transport people from one place to another. Short range, I'm sure. I don't imagine that this airplane would have a very long range, but you could still move people back and forth in theater fairly well. Now, sitting down here underneath it, and forgive me for the lighting in here, it is a little dark, but this is a A37. It was based on the T-37 trainer. Tweety Bird, I believe, is what they called the trainer. But Cessna A37 Dragonfly. So pretty neat little twin place, twin engine, light attack airplane. So used extensively in the Vietnam War era. You can see again on the horizontal tailplanes, the radial aerials, big radio aerial on the spine of the aircraft. So basically take what you got and modify it and make it do what you want it to do. In that case, they took the trainer version and made it into an attack aircraft. Another one of these utility aircraft, I believe this is a U-12. We'll look at it in just a minute, but this is based off of a civilian light airplane, twin engine. Okay, so I was way off on that. Cessna U-3, called the Blue Canoe, military version of the Cessna 310. So at least I was right about that part. So really nice looking little airplane. And again, I would imagine that they use that for moving personnel around. Now, back behind it, you can see the tail of a Russian-built MiG, so we'll get around to look at that in just a minute. They have this engine sitting on a stand, and this appears to be a T-56 turboprop off of a C-130. So, kind of neat. And sitting next to it is Jolly Green Giant, or at least what it was affectionately known as, and we'll take a closer look at that here in just a moment also. HH-43 Husky, built by Cayman. Not a very popular helicopter manufacturer, but I remember seeing these, I don't know, maybe even this very one. I kind of doubt it, but never know. But I remember seeing these fly when my dad was stationed at Myrtle Beach Air Force Base in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And the neat thing is the rotor blades, they kind of intermesh with each other. One kind of goes across the other one, and as it's coming around, the second one goes back across the top of it, and so it's just this big intermeshed, but the design did solve the torque problem that a standard helicopter would have, where you'd have one main rotor turning in one direction, so the torque would try and twist the airframe. Now these rotors were counter rotating, so that means they rotated in opposite directions. So the torque from one would cancel the torque in the other one. You didn't have a tail rotor in this airplane, or this helicopter, excuse me. So it's just some fins and a big exhaust from the engine. So the back end of this helicopter could open up down in the bottom, which can't really see it that well because of the way that post is sitting there, but it allowed for easy loading and unloading. Had a very spacious cargo section in it. And of course, right here in front of it, you have Lycoming T-53 turboprop engine. It's a cutaway. Kind of gives you some of the idea of some of the engines that were used in these aircraft. Now, this is one of my personal favorites. I've always liked the OV-10. Just a pretty mean looking, stubby, aggressive looking little turboprop. I mean, the wingspan isn't much, you know. It's got that high T-tail on it back there, twin boom, short mid fuselage. You can see the guns that are in the little pods right there. On each side it had the guns. So this is a pretty aggressive attack aircraft. Now OV-10, again, an observer airplane, but It had the capability of firing smoke rockets and everything, just like the other one and the O2 Skymaster. This also had the ability of marking targets and calling in the heavy fighters and everything. But again, like I said, always been one of my favorites just because of the design. You know, it's really kind of cool looking. Has an aggressive look to it, even just sitting still. So they say that from what I've heard, this is a very agile, very fun to fly airplane. So all right, back to the Jolly Green. So this is a big helicopter. I mean, there are bigger helicopters out there today, but at one point in time, this was it. So you can see the size of the rotor. Let's see, looks like 5 main blades on the main rotor. So they would use this for rescuing down pilots. Earlier in my video I talked about the penetrator. It was in one of those displays. You can see that hanging on the winch on the side of this helicopter, and they would use that. They'd drop it down through the trees, through the canopy tops of the trees, and this thing would just kind of like punch through and make it down to the ground where the downed airman might be that they're trying to rescue. Looking at UH-1 Huey. Actually, this one has the nickname of Iroquois, which I think was actually the original official nickname of the helicopter, Iroquois. But they called it the Huey. Just about every version of the UH-1. So this one's got a little mini Gatling gun in it. Not all of them had that, but they were used by Army, Air Force, Navy. I believe the Marines used the Hueys. So yeah, just about every service had one form or another of this helicopter. There's another utility airplane. This looks like it might be a short takeoff and landing kind of plane, and the reason I say that is you look at the size of the flaps on the wing. Those flaps are huge, and it's got leading edge slats on the leading edge of the wing. So those are used for short takeoff, short landing. I mean, even the ailerons are big, but not near as big as the flaps are. So let's take a look and see. This is U-10 Super Courier. All right. Jolly Green Giant again. This is a front view. You can see it has the refueling probe on the front, so they could refuel this aircraft in flight. Winch on the side. It's twin engine, heavy lift helicopter from the Vietnam era. Teledyne Ryan Firebee. This was used for electronic countermeasures. I know later on they kind of modified them and turned them into target drones, but supersonic, unmanned, really was one of the original unmanned aerial vehicles. Of course, now today we've got unmanned aerial vehicles that'll fly all around the world. Now, next to the F-14, this airplane right here, pretty much any version of, course this is the F-4D Phantom II, but the F-4 was originally built for the Navy. The Air Force got a hold of one of the Navy birds and evaluated it, and they really liked the airplane. The one thing that they didn't like so much about it was the fact that the Navy F4s did not have internal guns. It was all a missile airplane. So I said this is an F4D. The F4E, which was built for the Air Force specifically, they actually put a gun in the nose. Now on this one you can see it's got a gun pod mounted on the center line underneath the belly of the airplane. But no matter what model, the F4 just is stunning. I mean, to me, it looks fast sitting still. I mean, I know this sounds weird, but I actually feel nervous standing in front of it because, you know, I expect it to start moving. But so they've got this one loaded out like it would have been during Vietnam. They've got air-to-ground missiles on it. They got the guns. They got the electronic jamming pods. It's got the drop tanks, and of course they got the trailer sitting over here with the Sparrow missiles. You know, ready to. They could carry Sparrows underneath the belly in recessed mounts. So it had 2 J79 afterburning engines. And if the F4 proved anything, it proved that with enough thrust you can make a brick fly. So nicely done. Okay, remember I told you on the other side earlier that you saw the back end of this MiG. Now this was basically the adversary that the F4 flew against in the Vietnam War. This is a MiG-17. Called it the Fresco. Now you can tell by looking at the F4 just a moment ago and then looking at this airplane, quite a difference in design, in size, in speed. Now even though this aircraft was fast, let's see, max speed 696 miles an hour. It was not supersonic. Okay, the F4 on the other hand, see if I can find it, maximum speed 1400 miles an hour. So the F4 could just power away from this airplane in most cases. Now they get slow enough doing maneuvering that this airplane, the MiG-17, was very nimble, very responsive to control inputs, and it flew really well. And it had very heavy armament. You can see right here underneath the nose. I want to say that this thing had a 20mm cannon, and I don't remember what the other one, and I don't see it on this placard. It doesn't talk about the ammunition, but you can see that it's got a cannon on one side, and then it's got a machine gun, actually 2 of them on the other side. So I mean, it could spit out some very lethal rounds, and if hit in the right place, that could really take down just about anything. So this is J79 engine sitting here on the stand. Sikorsky HH-34 Choctaw, and that looks like that's it back in the back. Very similar to the one that we looked at on the other side that had the meshing main rotor blades. So, but sitting here in front of it, F-105 Thunder Chief. So really large fighter aircraft. It actually did much better as a bomber than it did as a fighter. Well, at least it was employed as a bomber more than it was as a fighter, even though it had the F designation. So maximum speed 1390 miles an hour, almost as fast as the F4. This was a single engine airplane. So you can see here on the side that it had a 6-barrel Gatling gun. I don't know that the original versions had the internal gun, but yeah, just sleek. It looks fast, but it was basically a heavy bomber. They would send it on bombing missions. Of course, they sent the F-4 on a lot of bombing missions too. So that was more or less the name of the game in Vietnam, was, you know, supporting the troops on the ground. Air superiority, not necessarily as important. Well, I shouldn't say important. It was important, but it wasn't taken as seriously as it is nowadays. I mean, if you own the air, you own it all. So that was kind of a different thinking back then. So F-105 simulator cockpit. So pretty roomy. Heck, I could fit in there rather comfortably. So there you have it. We're going to move on to the next building. So hope you're enjoying your tour.